My name is Darrell, and I am 35 years old. What should have been a beautiful celebration for my brother turned into the most painful day of my life. When my 12-year-old nephew Lucas stood up and said, "Buy yourself a real family next time, Uncle Mark," the room fell silent. Everyone stared, then laughed. My parents nodded in approval. I remained quiet, hiding my shattered heart. But something inside me changed forever. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever felt like an outsider in your own family. To understand what happened that day, you need to know about my family. My older brother Robert, now 38, was always the golden child. From the moment he was born, our parents, Harold and Martha, practically worshipped the ground he walked on. He was the star quarterback in high school, got a full scholarship to an Ivy League college, and went on to become a successful investment banker in San Francisco. Everything he touched seemed to turn to gold. I, on the other hand, was always the afterthought. My achievements were acknowledged with a distracted, "That's nice, Darrell," before the conversation inevitably turned back to Robert's latest accomplishment. I was not a failure by any means. I built a successful software design company from the ground up and made a comfortable living. But in my family's eyes, I would forever be living in Robert's shadow. Robert married young to his high school sweetheart, Jessica. They had Lucas when Robert was just 26. For a few years, everything seemed perfect in his world. I was genuinely happy for him, and I adored being an uncle to Lucas. I would take him to baseball games, help him build model rockets, and spend hours teaching him how to code simple games. Those were good days, and despite the undercurrent of favoritism from my parents, I believed we were a solid family unit. Then, when Lucas was 7, the cracks began to show. Jessica caught Robert having an affair with Angela, his assistant at the bank. The divorce was messy and painful for everyone, especially Lucas. I tried to be there for my nephew, maintaining our weekly hangouts and providing some stability in his life. But Robert quickly moved Angela into his luxury apartment downtown, and things started to change. Angela never liked me. From our first meeting, she viewed me as competition for Robert's attention and, by extension, his resources. She was a former model with expensive tastes and big ambitions. Robert was her ticket to the high society life she craved, and she made it her mission to isolate him from anyone she saw as a threat, particularly me. "I do not understand why you waste so much time with Lucas and your brother," I overheard her telling Robert at a family barbecue 3 years ago. "Your focus should be on building our future, not babysitting." Over the next few months, my invitations to spend time with Lucas dwindled, then stopped altogether. When I called, Robert always had excuses. Lucas had soccer practice, he had too much homework, they were busy with family activities. The definition of family had clearly changed, and I was no longer included. The real pain came during holidays and special occasions. 3 Thanksgivings ago, I arrived at my parents' house with a special gift for Lucas, a custom-built gaming computer I had spent weeks assembling. When I rang the doorbell, my mother answered with an awkward expression. "Oh, Darrell, did we forget to call you? We moved dinner to Robert's new vacation house in Lake Tahoe this year. Everyone left yesterday. We thought someone had told you." No one had told me. I stood on the porch holding my gift, feeling like an idiot. That night, I ate a microwave turkey dinner alone in my apartment and drank enough whiskey to numb the pain of exclusion. This pattern continued. I was accidentally not included in the family Christmas card photo. My birthday passed without a call from anyone except my elderly Aunt Florence. When I hosted a housewarming party after buying my new condo, only 2 distant cousins showed up, despite inviting my entire family. Through it all, I kept sending Lucas birthday and Christmas gifts. I emailed him coding tutorials and game recommendations. Occasionally, he would respond with a brief "Thanks, Uncle Darrell" text that I suspected Robert or Angela had prompted. But the close relationship we once had was gone. Last summer, I ran into Lucas at the mall. He was with Angela, shopping for school clothes. When he saw me, his eyes lit up for a moment, but Angela quickly ushered him away with a cold, "We are running late, Darrell. Maybe another time." There was no other time. When Robert and Angela announced their engagement 6 months ago, I received the news via a mass email sent to Robert's business associates and distant relatives. My parents called, excited about the wonderful news and the beautiful ring and the exclusive venue, but no one asked how I felt about it. I sent a congratulatory text to Robert, which received a thumbs-up emoji in response. The next day, an electronic save-the-date appeared in my inbox. I was invited to the wedding, but not included in any of the pre-wedding festivities. No bachelor party, no rehearsal dinner, just the ceremony and reception, like any other business acquaintance. When I called my mother to ask about my role in the wedding, her response was telling, "Well, Robert has so many close friends from work and the country club. They will be his groomsmen, but of course you should come to the wedding. Angela has been so stressed about the seating charts. Such a big event, you know." The message was clear. I was an obligation, not a desired guest. Still, they were my family, so I RSVP'd, yes, bought an expensive gift from their registry, and even splurged on a new suit for the occasion. Maybe, I thought, this would be a chance to reconnect and rebuild our relationship. I was wrong. So very wrong. The wedding was scheduled for the first Saturday in June, at the Silverado Resort in Napa Valley, a sprawling luxury hotel surrounded by vineyards and rolling hills. I arrived the night before and checked into my room, which overlooked the manicured gardens where the ceremony would take place. Everything was beautiful and tasteful, exactly what you would expect from a wedding with a 6-figure budget. That morning, I had breakfast alone in the hotel restaurant. Through the window, I could see the wedding party taking photos on the lawn, Robert in his tuxedo, Angela in her designer gown, my parents beaming with pride, and Lucas in a miniature version of his father's suit. I watched them laugh and pose, feeling like an outsider looking in on a family that was no longer mine. After breakfast, I returned to my room to prepare for the ceremony. I put on my new suit, adjusted my tie in the mirror, and practiced my smile. "Just get through today," I told my reflection. "Be pleasant, be supportive, and tomorrow you can go back to your life." The ceremony was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. I arrived early and took a seat near the back of the guest section. The chairs were arranged on the lawn, with an elaborate floral arch marking the altar. A string quartet played softly as guests arrived in their finery, air-kissing and complimenting each other on their outfits. My mother spotted me as she was being escorted to her seat in the front row. She waved distractedly and mouthed, "You look nice," before turning her attention to an elderly couple she apparently deemed more worthy of her time. My father nodded in my direction, but made no move to come speak to me. As the music changed and the procession began, I watched Angela's bridesmaids, 6 women I had never met, walk down the aisle in matching lavender dresses. Then came Lucas, carrying the rings on a satin pillow, followed by Robert and his best man, a colleague from the bank. The ceremony itself was brief and conventional. The couple exchanged vows they had written themselves, filled with inside jokes and promises that made the audience sigh and smile. I clapped at the appropriate moments and tried to feel happy for my brother. He had made mistakes, yes, but everyone deserves love and a second chance. After the ceremony, there was a cocktail hour on the terrace, while the wedding party took more photos. I stood alone with my champagne, watching other guests cluster in groups, chatting animatedly. Occasionally, someone would approach me with a, "So how do you know the happy couple?" When I answered that I was the groom's brother, they would look surprised and quickly find an excuse to move on. It was during this hour that Lucas approached me. He had grown so much since I had last seen him up close, taller, his features more defined, looking more like Robert every day. But there was something in his expression that concerned me, a hardness that had not been there before. "Uncle Darrell," he said, his voice flat. "Mom said I should come say hello to you." "Jessica is here?" I asked, surprised. The divorce had been bitter, and I had not expected Robert to invite his ex-wife. "No," Lucas replied with a slight sneer. "Angela. She is my mom now, my real mom." I felt a pang in my chest but tried to keep my expression neutral. "Well, it is nice to see you, Lucas. You have grown so much. How is school going? Still enjoying coding?" He shrugged. "I do not do that baby stuff anymore. I play lacrosse now, and I am going to be a banker like Dad. Before I could respond, Angela appeared at his side. There you are, sweetie. Your father is looking for you. The photographer wants some family shots. She barely glanced at me. Hello, Darrell. Enjoying yourself? They walked away before I could answer, Lucas leaning into her side as she put a protective arm around his shoulders. The reception was held in the resort's grand ballroom, with crystal chandeliers and elaborate floral centerpieces on every table. I found my name card at table 19, far from the head table where my parents, Robert, Angela, and Lucas, sat with Angela's parents in the wedding party. My table mates were a collection of distant relatives and Robert's former college roommate, none of whom seemed particularly interested in conversation. Dinner was served filet mignon and sea bass, wine pairings with each course, and a 5-tier wedding cake for dessert. Throughout the meal, there were the traditional toasts. The best man told amusing stories about Robert's college days. Angela's maid of honor cried as she described their friendship. My father stood and gave a speech about how proud he was of Robert, how he had always known his son would achieve greatness. And now, the best man announced. A few words from the groom's brother, Darrell. I was startled. No one had mentioned that I would be expected to speak. I had prepared nothing, having assumed I was too unimportant to be included in this part of the celebration. But all eyes were on me, so I slowly stood and approached the microphone. I was not expecting to speak today, I began awkwardly, but I am honored to say a few words about my brother Robert and his new wife Angela. I paused, gathering my thoughts. Robert has always been someone who knew what he wanted and went after it with determination. From sports to academics to his career, he has never settled for second best. Angela, you are getting a man who will move mountains to create the life he envisions. I wish you both all the happiness in the world, and Lucas too. Family is the most precious thing we have. Congratulations. It was brief and generic, but I had managed not to embarrass myself. I started to return to my seat when a small figure stood up at the head table. Lucas, his face flushed, stared directly at me. Buy yourself a real family next time, Uncle Mark, he said loudly, because you are not part of ours. The room went utterly silent. I froze halfway back to my table, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. He had not even gotten my name right, calling me Mark instead of Darrell, as if I were so insignificant he could not remember what I was called. Then someone, one of Angela's bridesmaids, laughed. Others joined in, a ripple of awkward laughter spreading through the room. I looked toward my parents, hoping for some intervention, some correction of this cruelty. But my mother was smiling indulgently at Lucas, and my father was nodding as if the boy had said something profound. Kids say the darndest things, Robert finally said into the microphone, his voice light but with an edge of satisfaction. But sometimes they see the truth more clearly than adults. Thanks for coming, Darrell. Angela pulled Lucas back into his seat and kissed the top of his head. She whispered something in his ear that made him smile smugly. The band quickly started playing, and the moment passed as guests returned to their cake and coffee. But for me, something had broken permanently. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what my family truly thought of me. I was not just unloved, I was unwanted. A nuisance to be tolerated and then dismissed, and they had taught a child, a boy I had once treasured time with, to despise me too. I do not remember finishing my cake. I do not remember the first dance, or the bouquet toss, or any other wedding traditions that might have followed. All I remember is the crushing weight in my chest, the difficulty breathing, the desperate need to escape before I shattered completely in front of everyone. Somehow I made it through the next hour, sitting at my table and staring at nothing. Guests danced and laughed around me, occasionally glancing in my direction with expressions ranging from amusement to pity. Not a single person, not one, came to check if I was okay, or to express disapproval at what had happened. When I felt I had stayed long enough to avoid causing another scene, I quietly slipped out of the ballroom. In the lobby, I ran into my mother, who was on her way back from the restroom. "Leaving already, Darrell?" she asked, her tone suggesting mild disappointment, but not surprise. "Yes," I managed to reply. "I have an early flight tomorrow." She nodded, adjusting her expensive shawl. It was a beautiful wedding, wasn't it? Angela's parents certainly know how to throw an event, and Lucas looked so handsome in his suit. I waited for her to mention the incident, to offer some word of comfort or apology. She said nothing. "Mom," I finally said, my voice barely audible, "did what Lucas said not bother you at all?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, Darrell, he is just a boy, and you know how things have been. Difficult. Robert says he has been acting out since the engagement." It did not mean anything. "He called me by the wrong name," I said, "and said I am not part of the family." And everyone laughed. You laughed. My mother's expression hardened slightly. "Well, you have not exactly made an effort to be part of the family, have you? Always busy with your computer work. Missing Sunday dinners because of deadlines. Hardly calling unless it is a holiday. Lucas barely knows you anymore." I stared at her in disbelief. "Mom, I stopped getting invited to Sunday dinners 3 years ago. I call every week, but no one picks up. I send emails that never get answered. I have tried." "I should get back to the reception," she interrupted. "Your father will be wondering where I am. Will we see you at breakfast tomorrow? Angela's parents have arranged a lovely brunch for the out-of-town guests." "No," I said. "I do not think so." She nodded as if this confirmed something she had long suspected. "Well, have a safe trip home then." She leaned in and pecked my cheek perfunctorily before heading back to the ballroom, leaving me alone with my devastation. I returned to my hotel room, undressed mechanically, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. For a long time, I just breathed, trying to process the events of the day. The pain was so intense it felt physical, like a wound that would leave a permanent scar. Around midnight, I opened my laptop and began to type. First, an email to my assistant confirming that I would not be in the office on Monday as planned, and instructing her to reschedule my meetings for the week. Then an email to my real estate agent, asking him to begin looking for properties in Seattle, a city I had visited for a conference last year and enjoyed for its natural beauty and tech-friendly culture. Finally, an email to my lawyer, outlining a plan that had been forming in my mind with increasing clarity as the night progressed. I was 35 years old. For most of those years, I had been chasing the approval of people who would never give it. I had been defining myself as Robert's younger brother or Harold and Martha's less successful son. I had been accepting scraps of attention and convincing myself it was a feast. No more. That night, I made a decision not born of anger or revenge, but of self-preservation and dignity. I would no longer participate in relationships that diminished me. I would no longer beg for inclusion in a family that had made it clear I was unwanted. I would no longer waste my energy trying to win the affection of people who had shown, repeatedly and conclusively, that they were incapable of giving it. Instead, I would build a life that reflected my values. I would surround myself with people who appreciated me for who I was, not who they wished I would be. I would use my resources, my time, my money, my skills to create something meaningful, something that would allow me to look in the mirror each morning with pride. By dawn, my plan was in place. I changed my flight to the earliest available departure, packed my bags, and left the hotel without saying goodbye to anyone. As my rideshare pulled away from the resort, I looked back at the scene of my humiliation one last time. The wedding decorations were still visible on the lawn, slightly bedraggled in the morning light. A banner reading "Congratulations, Robert and Angela" fluttered in the breeze. I turned away and did not look back again. This was the last day I would define myself in relation to them. Tomorrow would be the first day of my life as simply Darrell, not a brother, not a son, not an uncle, just me, finally free to become whoever I wanted to be. The freedom was terrifying. It was also exhilarating. On the plane, I made a list of all the things I had been putting off because they did not fit into my family's expectations. Travel to Japan to study traditional woodworking, learn to sail, volunteer with a youth coding program, sell my company, and start a new venture focused on educational technology rather than corporate solutions. I would do all of these things, and I would do them for me, not to impress anyone, not to earn approval, not to secure a place at the family table, just for the simple joy of living authentically. As the plane climbed through the clouds, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The pain was still there. I suspected it always would be, to some degree. But alongside it was something new and unfamiliar. Hope. Hope for a future I would build with my own hands, on my own terms. I closed my eyes and, for the first time in as long as I could remember, I slept peacefully. 2 weeks after the wedding, I closed on a modest but charming house in the Ballard neighborhood of Seattle. It was a far cry from my sleek downtown condo in San Francisco, smaller, older, with a yard that needed work and plumbing that occasionally protested, but from the moment I stepped inside, it felt more like home than anywhere I had lived in years. The house sat 3 blocks from Puget Sound, close enough that I could hear seagulls in the morning and smell the salt air when the wind was right. It had a small front porch where I placed a rocking chair and potted plants, and a backyard with an ancient apple tree that the previous owners said produced fruit sweet enough to make the neighborhood children beg for apple pies each fall. While I waited for my furniture to arrive, I slept on an air mattress and spent my days exploring my new city. Seattle welcomed me with its coffee shops and bookstores, its farmers markets and ferry rides. I introduced myself to neighbors without mentioning my family or my past, just as Darrell, the new guy on Seaview Avenue. It was refreshing to be known only for myself, with no comparisons or expectations attached. My next-door neighbors, Michael and Sarah, invited me over for dinner my first week in the neighborhood. They were both professors at the University of Washington. He taught environmental science. She taught comparative literature, and they had a 10-year-old daughter named Emma, who reminded me painfully of Lucas at a younger age. "What brought you to Seattle?" Sarah asked as we enjoyed grilled salmon on their deck. For a moment, I considered fabricating a simple story about a job opportunity or a desire for a change of scenery, but something about their genuine warmth made me want to be honest. "I needed a fresh start," I said. "Family issues that came to a head. I realized I had been trying to belong somewhere I was not wanted, and it was time to find a place where I could be myself." They did not press for details, but Michael nodded understandingly. Sometimes the hardest decision is walking away from what hurts you, especially when it is family. "We are glad you chose our neighborhood for your fresh start." That simple acceptance was the first stitch in the tapestry of my new life. Soon, there were others. I joined a community garden and learned to grow vegetables from Eliza, a retired botanist who took me under her wing. I volunteered at the local library, helping seniors learn to use computers. I found a favorite coffee shop where the barista, Jake, started preparing my usual order when he saw me coming through the door. 3 months after my move, I finalized the sale of my software company to a larger corporation. The deal left me with financial security and freedom to pursue projects that aligned with my values rather than just my bank account. After much consideration, I decided to establish a nonprofit organization focused on teaching coding skills to underserved youth. I rented a small office space in a converted warehouse and hired 3 young programmers who shared my vision. We developed a curriculum that combined technical skills with creative expression and partnered with local schools to offer after-school programs. The work was challenging and occasionally frustrating, but deeply satisfying in a way my corporate success had never been. One of our first partner schools was Lakeside Elementary, where I met Melissa Turner, a 4th-grade teacher with a passion for integrating technology into her classroom. She had warm brown eyes, an infectious laugh, and no patience for pretension or ego. "So you are the tech guy everyone is talking about," she said when we were introduced at a planning meeting. "The kids are excited. But I should warn you, they will ask a million questions and expect you to have all the answers." "I never pretend to have all the answers," I replied, "but I am pretty good at helping them figure things out for themselves." She smiled approvingly. "That is the right approach. Too many people come into schools wanting to be the hero or the expert. What these kids need are guides and collaborators." We worked together developing a coding project for her students, meeting after school to plan lessons and troubleshoot problems. Sometimes our meetings extended into dinner at a nearby Thai restaurant, where our conversations wandered from educational theory to favorite books to childhood memories. I found myself sharing stories about my early days with Lucas, teaching him to code and build rockets, carefully editing out the painful ending to our relationship. Melissa was divorced with no children of her own, though she spoke of her students as if they were family. Teaching was my second career, she told me over pad thai one evening. I was in corporate marketing for years, making good money, but feeling empty. One summer I volunteered at a camp for kids from low-income families, and it changed everything. I went back to school, got my teaching certificate, and never looked back. My ex-husband thought I was having a midlife crisis. Maybe I was, but it was the best decision I ever made. Her courage in reimagining her life inspired me. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, our professional collaboration evolved into friendship and then into something more. 6 months after meeting, we had our first official date, a ferry ride to Bainbridge Island, followed by a hike and picnic overlooking the water. As summer turned to fall and fall to winter, my new life took shape around me. I established a scholarship fund for promising young coders from disadvantaged backgrounds. I joined a book club that met monthly in a local brewery. I adopted a 3-legged rescue dog named Cooper who accompanied me on long walks along the waterfront. There were hard days, of course. Days when a random memory would ambush me, Lucas's 7th birthday party, when he had hugged me so tightly after unwrapping the telescope I had given him. My father teaching both Robert and me to fish at the lake house when we were boys, one of the few times I could remember him treating us equally. My mother's proud smile when my company was featured in a tech magazine, a rare acknowledgement of my achievements. On those days, I would feel the old wound throb, the sense of rejection and inadequacy threatening to overwhelm me. But I had developed tools to manage these feelings. I would take Cooper for an extra long walk, or call Melissa, or lose myself in a coding problem that required my full concentration. The pain would recede, not gone but manageable, a scar rather than an open wound. Gradually, I built a life that felt authentic and meaningful. My nonprofit grew, attracting grants and volunteers. My relationship with Melissa deepened, built on mutual respect and genuine affection. My house became a home, filled with books and music and the occasional dinner party for my growing circle of friends. One evening in early December, as Melissa and I decorated a Christmas tree in my living room, she asked if I had heard from my family at all. "No," I said, carefully hanging a blown glass ornament I had purchased at a local art fair. "Not a word since I left the wedding." "And you have not reached out either?" she asked gently. I shook my head. What would be the point? They made their feelings very clear. Lucas calling me by the wrong name. That was not an accident. That was a message. Melissa was quiet for a moment, stringing lights around the middle of the tree. "You know," she finally said, "in my classroom, I see a lot of children act out in hurtful ways because they are hurting themselves. It does not excuse it, but it helps explain it." "Lucas is 12, not 5, I replied, more sharply than I intended. "And my brother and parents are adults who should know better." They watched him humiliate me, and they applauded it. "You are right," she conceded. "I am not defending them. What they did was cruel and wrong. I just wonder sometimes if you might find some closure by telling them how their actions affected you. Not for their sake, but for yours." I considered her words. "Maybe someday," I said. "But not yet. I am still learning how to live without their approval. I am still discovering who I am outside of their shadow. Until I am confident in that person, I am not ready to face them again." She nodded and squeezed my hand. "That makes sense. And for what it is worth, I think the person you are becoming is pretty wonderful." That night, after Melissa went home, I sat looking at my Christmas tree, the first I had ever decorated entirely to my own taste, without considering anyone else's preferences or traditions. It was eclectic and imperfect, with ornaments that reflected my new life rather than my history. And it was beautiful. As Cooper snored softly at my feet, I realized I was happy, not the fleeting happiness of external validation or achievement, but a deeper contentment that came from living in alignment with my values. I was building something real and sustainable, a life that honored who I truly was, not who others wanted me to be. Little did I know that my newfound peace was about to be disrupted in ways I never could have anticipated. The first email arrived on a Tuesday morning in February, 8 months after the wedding. I was at my office, reviewing a grant proposal with my team, when my phone buzzed with a notification. Seeing my brother's name in my inbox gave me such a jolt that I excused myself and stepped into the hallway to read it. Subject: Need to talk. Darrell, I know we have not spoken since the wedding. Things are difficult here, very difficult. Could you please call me when you get a chance? It is important. Robert. The message was uncharacteristically brief and direct. No niceties, no small talk, not even a proper greeting or closing. Just a request, or rather, a demand for contact. I slipped the phone back into my pocket without replying, and returned to the meeting. Later, I showed the email to Melissa over dinner. Are you going to call him? She asked, studying my face. I twirled pasta around my fork, considering. I do not know. Part of me wants to ignore it completely. Another part is curious about what could be so important that he would reach out after all this time. And a small childish part of me wants to respond with, "Who is this?" Just to see how he would react. She smiled at that. I would not judge you for any of those responses. What does your gut tell you? My gut tells me that whatever is going on, it is not about me or our relationship. It is about something Robert needs. He never contacts me unless he wants something. The next day brought 3 missed calls from my parents' number and another email, this one from my mother. Darrell, we have been trying to reach you. Your brother is in a very difficult situation and needs your help. Please call us as soon as you can. This is a family emergency. Mom. Again, I did not respond. The phrase family emergency stuck in my throat like a fishbone. 8 months ago, they had stood by smiling, while a child publicly declared I was not part of the family. Now, suddenly, there was a family emergency that somehow involved me. The third communication came that same evening, a text from an unknown number that turned out to be Lucas. Uncle Darrell, it is Lucas. Dad said to text you. Things are really bad here. Angela left and Dad lost his job, and Grandma and Grandpa are really worried. I am sorry about what I said at the wedding. Please call Dad. This one was harder to ignore. Whatever was happening, it was affecting Lucas, who was still a child despite his role in my humiliation. His apology seemed forced and strategic, rather than genuinely remorseful. But he was likely just repeating what the adults around him had instructed him to say. I showed the text to Melissa, who had come over for dinner. Sounds like the family golden boy has fallen on hard times, she observed. Do you think it is true? About him losing his job and Angela leaving? I do not know, I said. It would be easy enough to find out, though. I opened my laptop and searched for my brother's name. To my surprise, several recent news articles appeared. The headlines told a story I had not expected. Riverside Capital Partners faces SEC investigation. Top executives at Riverside Capital resign amid fraud allegations. Robert Harrington, among executives, named in Riverside Capital lawsuit. I clicked through the articles, reading quickly. According to the reports, Robert's investment firm was being investigated for misrepresenting assets and misleading investors. Several top executives, including Robert, had resigned or been forced out. The company's assets were frozen pending investigation, and a class action lawsuit had been filed by angry investors. Well, I said, showing Melissa the screen, it appears to be true. Robert is in serious trouble. Over the next few days, the communications intensified. More calls, more texts, more emails, each more desperate than the last. My father called my office and left a message with my assistant. My mother somehow found Melissa's school email and sent her a message asking her to please convince Darrell to respond to his family. The most revealing message came from Robert directly, 10 days after his initial email. Darrell, I know you are getting these messages. Your assistant confirmed you are alive and well in Seattle. I do not blame you for ignoring us after what happened at the wedding. It was terrible and inexcusable. Lucas was repeating things he had heard Angela say. We should have corrected him, but I am desperate. The SEC has frozen all my accounts. Angela left when the scandal broke and filed for divorce. She is taking everything that is not already frozen. The house is in foreclosure. Lucas might have to leave his private school mid-semester. Mom and Dad loaned me most of their retirement savings last year for investment in what turned out to be fraudulent funds. They are facing financial ruin, too. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I am begging you to at least talk to me. If not for my sake, then for Lucas and our parents. Robert. I read the email several times, letting the implications sink in. Robert was admitting Angela had been talking about me behind my back, poisoning Lucas against me. He was acknowledging that the wedding incident was terrible and inexcusable, though he stopped short of taking personal responsibility for it. And he was confessing to taking money from our parents that he had now lost. Most importantly, he was desperate enough to humble himself by reaching out to me, the brother he had dismissed and excluded for years. I showed the email to Melissa that evening. "What do you think?" I asked. "Is this a genuine change of heart, or just desperation?" She read it carefully before responding. "I think it is mostly desperation," she said. "But that does not mean there is not some genuine regret mixed in. People often need to hit rock bottom before they can see the damage they have caused. So you think I should respond?" She handed the phone back to me. "That depends on what you want, Darrell. You have built a beautiful new life here. You are doing meaningful work. You are happy. You do not owe them anything. But ignoring them completely does not seem like something the Darrell I know would do. Not because they deserve your help, but because that is not who you are. You have always been the one who takes the high road, even when others do not." She was right. As much as part of me wanted to delete all their messages and continue with my new life as if they did not exist, I knew I would always wonder if I had missed an opportunity for resolution, or at least closure. That night, I composed a brief reply to Robert. "I will think about what you have shared and get back to you in a few days. In the meantime, do not contact Melissa or my workplace again." I did not promise anything, but I did not slam the door completely either. Then I spent the next several days researching. I confirmed the details of Robert's legal troubles through news sources. I checked property records and found that his house was indeed in foreclosure. I spoke with a lawyer friend about the implications of the SEC investigation and what it might mean for Robert's financial future. Everything indicated that Robert's desperate messages were based in reality. He and my parents were facing genuine financial hardship as a result of his company's fraudulent practices. Whether he was personally involved in the fraud or merely caught up in it remained unclear, but the consequences were undeniable. As I mulled over my options, I found myself thinking about Lucas. He was still just a child, caught in the middle of adult problems he had not created. He had been cruel to me at the wedding, yes, but children learn cruelty from adults. In his case, from Angela, who had now abandoned him when things got difficult, and from Robert, who had allowed and even encouraged the mistreatment of his brother. I thought about my own childhood, about growing up in Robert's shadow, always feeling less valued and less loved. I would not wish that feeling on any child, not even one who had publicly humiliated me. After much reflection, I sent Robert another message. "I have verified your situation. Before I decide whether to help, I need to know specifically what you are asking for. I also need to know that you understand why I left and why I have not been in contact. And I need to hear directly from Lucas, not a scripted apology, but his genuine thoughts." Robert's response came within minutes. "Thank you for at least considering it. What I need most urgently is help with Lucas's school tuition so he does not have to leave mid-year. The spring semester payment is due next week, $48,000. I cannot access any of my funds due to the freeze. As for why you left, I know we treated you badly for years. I let Angela isolate me from you because it was easier than standing up to her. I was jealous of your relationship with Lucas and worried you were a better influence on him than I was. At the wedding, when he said those terrible things, I should have corrected him immediately. Instead, I essentially endorsed it. I understand why you would cut us off completely after that. Lucas is sitting here with me now. I will let him respond separately about the wedding incident. No coaching from me, I promise." Shortly after, I received a message from Lucas's phone. "Uncle Darrell, this is Lucas. Dad said I should tell you how I really feel about what happened at the wedding. The truth is, I did not even know your name was Darrell back then. Angela always called you Mark when she talked about you, like your Uncle Mark who never comes around, or your Uncle Mark who thinks he is too good for us. I thought that was your name. I only found out your real name after you left, and Dad got really upset with me. I know saying that stuff was wrong. Back then I thought it would make Angela happy, and Dad would not be mad at me anymore. He and Angela fought a lot, and sometimes it was about you. Now Angela is gone, and Dad is sad all the time, and we might lose our house. I miss my old school and my friends. I am sorry I was mean to you. Dad showed me pictures of when I was little, and you used to take me places and teach me computer stuff. I do not remember most of it, but it looked fun. If you hate me now, I understand. Lucas. The raw honesty of the message hit me hard. This was not the scripted apology I had expected, but something much more revealing, a glimpse into the dysfunctional dynamics that had shaped Lucas's behavior. Angela had been deliberately using a wrong name for me. Robert and Angela had been fighting about me, and Lucas had been caught in the middle, trying to navigate adult conflicts he could not possibly understand. And now he was paying the price for his father's mistakes. I put down my phone and went for a long walk along the waterfront with Cooper, trying to sort through my feelings. Part of me still felt the sting of humiliation from the wedding. Another part recognized the genuine distress my family was experiencing. And a third part, the part that had always tried to be the bigger person, the peacemaker, wondered if this might be an opportunity to heal old wounds. As the sun set over Puget Sound, I made my decision. 3 days later, I was working from home when Cooper's sudden barking alerted me to visitors. Looking through the front window, I saw a rental car parked at the curb and 4 people standing on my porch: Robert, Lucas, and my parents. My first instinct was anger. I had not invited them, had not even told them my address. They had shown up unannounced, invading the sanctuary I had carefully created for myself. It felt like a violation, another example of my family disregarding my boundaries. But, as I looked more closely, I saw how different they appeared from the last time I had seen them. My father, once robust and confident, seemed diminished, his shoulders hunched inside a jacket that hung loosely on his frame. My mother's carefully maintained appearance had slipped. Her hair was unstyled, her clothes wrinkled. Robert looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated posture, and Lucas stood slightly apart from the adults, kicking at a pebble on my walkway, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. They had not come as conquerors or even as entitled family members. They had come as supplicants. Taking a deep breath, I opened the front door. "Hello," I said, my voice neutral. "This is unexpected." "Darrell," my father began, his voice raspy. "We know we should have called first, but we were afraid you would tell us not to come. We had to see you," my mother added. "We have been so worried. You just disappeared." Robert said nothing, but his eyes met mine with a mixture of desperation and shame. Lucas continued to stare at the ground. I looked at them for a long moment, feeling a complex swirl of emotions: resentment at their intrusion, satisfaction at their obvious distress, pity for their current state, and a small, persistent ache of familial connection that refused to be completely extinguished. "You might as well come in," I finally said, stepping back to allow them entry. "Cooper, it is okay. They are people I know." I deliberately did not say family, and I saw my mother flinch at the distinction. They filed into my living room, looking around with poorly disguised curiosity at the life I had built without them. My father's eyes lingered on the wall of bookshelves I had built myself. My mother noticed the photographs of me with Melissa and my Seattle friends displayed on the mantel, images of a happy life they knew nothing about. Robert seemed to be cataloging everything, perhaps calculating its value. Lucas alone appeared genuinely interested in my home for its own sake, his eyes lighting up when he spotted my gaming setup in the corner. "Please sit down," I said, gesturing to the couch and armchairs. "Can I get anyone water or coffee?" They all declined except Lucas, who asked quietly for water. I went to the kitchen to fetch it, using the moment alone to compose myself. When I returned, I found them all seated stiffly, looking uncomfortable and out of place. I handed Lucas his water and took a seat in my favorite reading chair, positioning myself slightly apart from the group. "So," I said, "why are you here? In person, I mean." We were communicating by email. Robert cleared his throat. I thought this conversation needed to happen face to face. I need to apologize properly, and I need to explain our situation fully. We miss you, son, my father interjected. We have made terrible mistakes, inexcusable mistakes. We want to make things right, my mother added. If that is even possible. I looked at each of them in turn, trying to gauge their sincerity. Before we go any further, I said, I need to know something. How did you find my address? I never shared it with any of you. They exchanged glances, and Robert shifted uncomfortably. I hired a private investigator, he admitted. I know that was wrong, invading your privacy, but we were desperate to find you. You spent money on a private investigator when you claimed to be financially ruined? I asked skeptically. It was before everything fell apart, Robert explained. Right after the wedding. When you disappeared, I was worried, and also angry. I wanted to know where you had gone. By the time I got the information, things had changed, and I did not use it until now. I processed this revelation. Robert had been tracking me all along, not out of concern, but initially out of anger, or perhaps a desire to control. Only desperation had finally driven him to my door. I see, I said. And what exactly do you want from me now? We need your help, Darrell, my father said plainly. We have lost everything. The house, the vacation property, our savings. Robert's legal troubles mean he cannot work in finance again. Your mother and I are too old to start over. And Lucas, he glanced at the boy. Lucas deserves some stability. Financial help, you mean? I clarified. Yes, Robert admitted. But not just money. We need a family. We need you. Lucas, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke up. I really am sorry about the wedding, Uncle Darrell. I was stupid and mean. Angela told me to say that stuff. She said it would make my dad happy. And did it make your dad happy? I asked, looking directly at Robert. Lucas looked down again. He laughed. Everyone laughed. Not everyone, I said quietly. I did not laugh. It broke my heart. The room fell silent. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. My father stared at his hands. Robert looked like he had been struck. I know, he finally said. I knew it then too. But I was so caught up in the wedding, in impressing Angela's friends, in being the center of attention, I did not want to deal with anything uncomfortable. It was easier to laugh it off than to do the right thing. And then you left. And at first I was relieved because it meant I did not have to face what had happened. By the time I realized what I had lost, you were gone. I have been gone for a long time, I said. Not just physically. You all pushed me out of the family years ago. The wedding was just the final straw. We did not realize, my mother began. Yes, you did, I interrupted firmly. You knew exactly what was happening. You chose Robert at every turn. You allowed his wife to isolate him. You excluded me from family events. You treated me like an afterthought. And when Lucas publicly humiliated me, you smiled and nodded as if he had done something clever. My words hung in the air, harsh but true. For perhaps the first time, I was speaking my truth without softening it to protect their feelings. You are right, my father said, surprising me. We favored Robert. We always did. He was our firstborn, and he seemed to need more attention, more validation. You were always so self-sufficient, so capable on your own. We told ourselves you were fine, that you did not need us the way he did. It was wrong, and I am ashamed of it now. We never meant to hurt you, my mother added tearfully. We just did not think. That is exactly it, I said. You did not think about me at all. And now you are here because you need something. If Robert's company was still successful, if Angela was still around, if everything was still perfect in your golden child's life, would you be sitting in my living room right now? Would you have ever sought me out to apologize? None of them answered. They did not need to. We all knew the truth. Lucas, who had been listening intently, suddenly stood up. I want to see your dog, he said, nodding toward Cooper, who was watching us cautiously from his bed in the corner. I welcomed the interruption. His name is Cooper. He is friendly but a bit shy with new people. You can go say hello if you want. Just move slowly and let him sniff your hand first." As Lucas crossed the room to meet Cooper, I turned back to the adults. "I need to be very clear about something. I have built a good life here. I have friends who value me. I have meaningful work. I have a relationship with someone who sees and appreciates me for exactly who I am. I will not risk any of that to jump back into a family dynamic that was toxic and painful." "We understand," my mother said quickly. "We just want a chance to be in your life again, to make amends." "And you need money," I added bluntly. Robert nodded. "Yes, I will not deny that. I have lost everything, and I have dragged Mom and Dad down with me. Lucas's school has given us until the end of the week to pay his tuition, or he will have to leave. We are staying in a budget motel because we cannot afford anything else. I am out of options, Darrell." I looked over at Lucas, who was now sitting on the floor with Cooper, gently petting the dog's head. The boy looked happier than he had since arriving, a glimpse of the innocent child beneath the attitude he had displayed at the wedding. "Lucas," I called, "can I ask you something?" He looked up, suddenly wary again. "Okay, do you like your school? Is it important to you to stay there?" He hesitated, glancing at his father, as if seeking permission to answer honestly. "It is okay," I assured him. "I want to know what you think, not what you think I want to hear." "I like my friends there," he said cautiously. "And the coding club is cool. My math teacher, Mr. Wilson, is helping me with a robot project." "So it is important to you?" He nodded. "Yeah, but Dad says we cannot afford it anymore, and that is okay. I can go to a different school." I turned back to the adults. "Here is what I am willing to do. I will pay Lucas's tuition directly to the school for the remainder of this academic year. That will give you time to make other arrangements for next year if necessary. I will also help you find affordable housing, not by giving you money, but by co-signing a lease if needed. And I will introduce Robert to some contacts in the tech industry who might be willing to consider him for entry-level positions, despite his financial background." "Thank you, Darrell," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "That is more than generous." "I am not finished," I continued. "These offers come with conditions. First, all of you will get jobs, any jobs to support yourselves. I will help with specific expenses for Lucas, but I will not provide ongoing financial support for adults capable of working. Second, we will all attend family therapy together if you want to rebuild a relationship with me. And third, Lucas will spend 1 weekend a month with me, if he wants to, so we can rebuild our relationship too." "Therapy?" my father repeated, sounding skeptical. "Yes," I said firmly. "If you want me in your lives again, we need to address the patterns that led us here. I will not go back to being the forgotten son, the convenient scapegoat, or the emergency bank account." My mother reached for my hand, but I gently moved it away. "We have a lot of work to do before we get to that point," I told her. "I am willing to try, but I need to see real change, not just words." "We will do whatever it takes," she promised, tears streaming down her face. "We have lost so much. We cannot bear to lose you, too." "You already lost me," I reminded her. "I am offering you a chance to build something new, something healthier, but it has to be on terms that respect all of us." Robert nodded solemnly. "I understand, and I accept your conditions, all of them." My father looked less convinced, but nodded as well. "We will try." Lucas, who had been listening while continuing to pet Cooper, looked up at me. "Does that mean I can come visit you and Cooper sometimes?" "If you want to," I said. "Can you teach me coding again? I remember a little bit from when I was little." For the first time since they had arrived, I felt a genuine smile cross my face. "I would like that, Lucas, very much." As the conversation continued, details were worked out. I would call Lucas's school the next day. Robert would start applying for jobs immediately. My parents would move in with a cousin temporarily while they figured out their next steps. We scheduled our first therapy appointment for the following week. Before they left, Lucas hung back for a moment. "Uncle Darrell," he said quietly, "is your girlfriend nice? The lady in the pictures?" "Yes," I said. "Melissa is very nice. She is a teacher, actually. 4th grade. Will I meet her when I come visit?" If you would like to. He nodded thoughtfully. Cool. And Uncle Darrell? I remember your name now. I will not forget it again. It was a small thing, but somehow it meant more than all the elaborate apologies that had come before it. As they drove away from my house, I felt emotionally drained, but curiously light-hearted. I had faced my family on my terms, spoken my truth without flinching, and set boundaries that protected the life I had built. Whether these boundaries would lead to reconciliation or final separation remained to be seen, but for the first time, I felt in control of my relationship with my family rather than at its mercy. That evening, I called Melissa and told her everything. "Are you sure about this?" she asked when I had finished. "Letting them back into your life after everything they did?" "I am not sure of anything," I admitted. "But I am offering them a path forward with clear boundaries. If they can respect those boundaries, maybe we can build something new. If not, at least I will know I tried." "And you are doing it for Lucas," she observed. Partly I agreed. He is just a kid caught in adult drama. But I am also doing it for me. I need to know if real change is possible, or if I need to close this chapter completely. Either way, I will have answers instead of questions. "Well," she said warmly, "whatever happens with them, you still have me and your friends here. You have built a beautiful life, Darrell. Do not let them take that away from you again." "I will not," I promised. "This time, I know exactly who I am and what I deserve." 6 months after my family's unexpected appearance on my doorstep, we gathered in my backyard for a barbecue. It was a beautiful late summer evening, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold as the sun began its descent over Puget Sound. Cooper trotted around the yard, keeping an eye on the gathering while hoping for dropped food. The changes in those 6 months had been remarkable. Robert had taken an entry-level position at a friend's tech startup, swallowing his pride to work under people a decade younger with a fraction of his former salary. He had moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment, where Lucas lived with him full-time. My parents had relocated permanently to Seattle, renting a small condo near a community college where my mother had found work as an administrative assistant. My father, after initial resistance, had taken a job as a manager at a hardware store, discovering to his surprise that he enjoyed sharing his handyman knowledge with customers. Lucas had finished the school year with improved grades and renewed enthusiasm for his coding projects. He had spent 1 weekend each month with me as agreed, and our relationship had gradually strengthened. We had rebuilt the model rocket hobby we had shared when he was younger, launching them in a park near my house and celebrating each successful flight. The family therapy sessions had been difficult but productive. There had been tears, accusations, and painful truths spoken aloud for the first time. My parents had finally acknowledged the lifelong favoritism they had shown Robert. Robert had admitted his jealousy of my independence and success outside the traditional paths he had followed. I had confronted them about the wedding incident and many others that had preceded it, no longer minimizing the pain they had caused. Our therapist, Dr. Eleanor Wilson, had guided us through these conversations with wisdom and compassion, helping us establish new patterns of communication and respect. The wounds were deep and would take more than 6 months to heal completely, but we had made progress that once would have seemed impossible. Now, as I flipped burgers on the grill, I watched my newly configured family interact with the life I had built in Seattle. My father and Michael were discussing environmental conservation, finding unexpected common ground. My mother was helping Melissa set the picnic table, asking questions about her teaching philosophy. Robert was chatting with my friend Jake from the coffee shop, looking humbled but engaged. Lucas and Emma were playing fetch with Cooper, their laughter carrying across the yard. "Need any help with those burgers?" a voice asked, and I turned to find Lucas beside me, slightly out of breath from running with the dog. "Sure," I said, handing him the spatula. "Just make sure you flip them when you see the juice starting to come through the top." He nodded seriously, accepting the responsibility with pride. As he concentrated on the grill, I took a moment to really look at him. He had grown an inch or two in 6 months, and had lost some of the angry edge that had defined him at the wedding. There was still a wariness in his eyes sometimes, a residual effect of the upheaval in his life, but there was also a growing confidence and authenticity. "Uncle Darrell," he said, not looking up from the burgers. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course. I'm glad you did not give up on us, even though we were really mean to you. I think Dad is a better dad now that he is not rich anymore. And Grandma and Grandpa talk to me more, instead of just giving me stuff." The simple observation caught me off guard with its insight. "That is a pretty grown-up way of looking at things, Lucas." He shrugged. "Dr. Wilson says sometimes losing stuff helps you figure out what really matters. I think that is what happened to us." I put my arm around his shoulders in a brief half-hug. "I think you might be right." After dinner, as twilight deepened and the first stars appeared, we gathered around the fire pit I had built in the corner of the yard. Melissa sat close beside me, her presence a quiet affirmation of how far I had come. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and the comfortable silences of people no longer straining to impress each other. At one point, my mother reached across the circle and took my hand. "Thank you, Darrell," she said simply, "for giving us another chance, for showing us a better way to be a family." "We are still learning," I reminded her gently. "All of us." "Yes," she agreed, "but we are learning together now, instead of apart." Later that night, after everyone had gone and Melissa and I were cleaning up the kitchen, she asked me if I had any regrets about my decision to allow my family back into my life. "Not regrets," I said carefully, "but I do have moments of caution. I will never forget what happened at the wedding or the years of exclusion that came before it. I do not think complete healing is possible. Some injuries leave permanent scars. But I am finding that forgiveness does not require forgetting. It requires building something new that acknowledges the past without being trapped by it." "That is a powerful realization," she said, leaning against the counter. "And what about you? How are you different now?" I considered the question. "I know my worth now," I finally said. "I discovered it by building this life, by doing work that matters, by connecting with people who value me for who I am. That knowledge will never leave me again, no matter what happens with my family. I no longer need their approval or validation to feel complete." "That is the most attractive thing about you," she said, kissing me lightly. "Your quiet certainty of who you are." The journey from that devastating moment at Robert's wedding to this peaceful evening in my Seattle home had been neither straight nor easy. There had been anger to process, boundaries to establish, trust to rebuild. There would still be difficult days ahead, old patterns that would need to be recognized and redirected. The work of transforming a dysfunctional family into a healthy one was ongoing. But what I had learned through it all was that true family, whether born or chosen, is built on mutual respect, genuine care, and the courage to speak difficult truths with love. It requires acknowledging hurts rather than hiding them, and working together to create relationships where everyone can thrive. My nephew's cruel words at the wedding had shattered the illusion that I could earn my family's love by diminishing myself. In the most painful way possible, he had forced me to recognize that I needed to build a life on my own terms, with people who could see and appreciate my authentic self. Paradoxically, it was only after I stopped trying to belong in a family that did not truly want me that I created the space for a new kind of family to emerge, one based not on obligation or history, but on choice and mutual growth. Sometimes the deepest wounds become our greatest teachers. Sometimes what looks like an ending becomes the beginning of something far more beautiful than we could have imagined. And sometimes the family we need is not the one we are born into, but the one we create through courage, forgiveness, and the willingness to begin again. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved in order to find yourself? Have you experienced the painful growth that comes from setting boundaries with family? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to hear more stories of healing and transformation, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that it is never too late to build the life and relationships you truly deserve. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your worth is not determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to treat yourself.